this is Christina Barton. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barton. Today, we're going to be talking about the story about this mother in Ohio who pled guilty to the murder of her 16-month-old baby after she left her in a pack and play for 10 days alone. And so this is obviously a tragic thing, and most people can agree that it's a tragic thing, but it did lead to some questions about how our society could have such ideas to um, be so blatantly neglectful to one's children. So I've been engaged in a lot of pro-life abolitionist type, I guess, discussions the past few days. Um, though you have not seen me, I've took a little vacay. My sister, her birthday was on the 24th, and so we went out to dinner that day. But we had planned to like go up north and not too far up north, but it was a little bit of a drive, and hung out and Frankenmuth, and so got back yesterday, and I apologize for being late. There were some errands and other things I was doing that held me up and delayed me a bit, but it's glad to be back. Lots and lots of things have happened. There was the guy who lit himself on fire, and the reactions from people were quite disturbing. Um, we should not cheer, people doing such things, but alas, our world is freaking weird. It's Culture of Death is the title of today's episode. And also, while I was out, I got and was walking around, I guess, a Christmas store. Before I got into the Christmas store, I started going back and forth with an ethics professor on the subject of abortion, and which led me down a rabbit hole of, I guess, studying his material, which left me unimpressed. But I'll talk about that as well. But before I jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys, go to blacktenews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, different videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktenews.com/donate, because it does cost a stream on my website, all that good stuff. So if you guys can support, I very much do appreciate you guys. You guys can also drop in your email and stuff to get different emails. I promise I do not spam you to death with emails. I don't probably send enough emails, but so just go, if you go to blacktnews.com, you can insert your email, and you get on our newsletter. You can check out different merch on the website, like I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For tea, and other stuff as well, like the Be Better Not Bitter shirt. And also got black tea mug, which I have one right here. I poured my juice in it. Oh gosh, you guys can't see. Let me move it around a little bit so you guys can actually see. Though if you're familiar, yeah, you know what it looks like with the logo right there. So nice little mug, and these got the color inside, so you guys can get it in red. And I don't remember what other colors there are, but why wouldn't you get it in red and the inside lining? So that's why I got the red one. Because it's neat. It's neat. You guys can also check out my stuff on Amazon. I have many books that I've written. 17 that are published, 2 are nonfiction, the rest are fiction. And one of my nonfiction books is, of course, God is Blatantly Against Abortion, that you guys can get on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You guys can get paperback or ebook. So go ahead and check that stuff out. If you're watching on Facebook, you guys can send stars. For watch on YouTube, you guys can send super chats. So I do not have a meme or a funny thing to show you guys today, but I will talk about one thing that was pretty funny. SNL was I didn't watch SNL. I guess there's 2 clips that were going around that someone that I follow on Facebook, on Twitter, posted them, and they're like, oh, they were actually funny this weekend. So one of them, the videos I did retweet. So if you follow me on Twitter, perhaps you've seen the retweet of a skit that they did about Trump sneakers. And I hadn't mentioned the Trump sneakers And one day my sister was like, "Christina, how come Black T didn't tell me about these sneakers?" I'm like, I'm sorry. I saw it. I just didn't really talk about it because Trump introduced some Trump sneakers. I was gonna try to see. I all my other like siblings have worked in shoes basically. My brother used to work at Nike. My youngest sister worked at Converse, and then Foot Locker. My sister Sabrina, she worked at Clark's, which is like not an upscale, shoe store, but it's an okay shoe store. She used to be over shoes at Target, that section too, but whatever. But my sister Katrina used to work at Cole Haan, and so I just wanted to know what was their opinion on the shoes, and like, because to me, I'm like, they want like $400 or whatever that, or some people are paying more, and I'm like, is that not even real leather? So to me, it was like, why? But then I asked one of my sisters, I guess it was Tina. She's like, sneakerheads don't care. And I'm like, but why wouldn't they pay? Why would they pay that much if it's not like real leather and stuff? And she's like, they don't. They pay money for stuff that isn't real leather all the time, and she just seemed kind of baffled by a lot of the enthusiasm. I didn't talk to my brother about it, but from there I just kind of was like, oh, okay. People are feeling it. Like, you understand, it's part of the name brand thing. I guess they do look kind of neat for gold sneakers. I don't know, but the SNL skit with the sneakers was quite funny. Um, and I'll just say a line. They're like, someone got the sneakers, and the person in the skit was someone who SNL actually fired some time ago, and I'm not exactly sure why, but I've seen him on Twitter talking about Trump, and he does a pretty good impression of Trump and stuff. So some of his jokes have come across my feed, and which he said some of his pretty controversial jokes that probably aren't too TV friendly while he was doing his opening monologue, which was interesting. But he was the lead of the skit, and they're like, "So you're telling me these shoes make you good at basketball?" And he said, "No, the shoes make me have the confidence to say I'm good at basketball." And so the story just progressed from there, and it was really just kind of on the head, the nail on the head, as it was a good skit. And I feel like a lot of humor, especially regarding the right and poking fun at the right or poking fun at Trump, they usually kind of hate him too much to be uh to tell good jokes, because there needs to be a bit of an understanding of your subject matter when you're making the content. So if you're just so hateful and you can't kind of see them for as a complex, character, you're gonna not be able to really land the joke well, because it's just gonna sound like vitriol, I suppose. But this I don't know what happened with that skit. Maybe the comedian who came on that night helped to make it or something. I don't know. But it was funny. It was very funny. So go ahead and check that out. I would play it for you guys, but I don't feel like having to fight the copyright with SNL. So that's why I didn't show it. So but it is funny, and I just wanted to tell you guys because we like to talk about some funny things sometimes. So anyway, I want to start off this conversation today with a story that I was reminded of yesterday due to just the nature of the conversations I was having, and I'll explain why. But let me just start with my story. Okay, so yesterday I was reminded of this game I played as a kid, which I'm sure most people will probably recognize the game, Sonic Adventure Battle 2. So the game, I believe, came out in 2002, so pretty long ago. That was when they introduced Shadow the Hedgehog, which they are doing some of that storyline in the next Sonic movie. At the end of Sonic 2, they showed Shadow, and they teased Shadow. In the trailer of the upcoming film, people say that there's a bit of live and learn in the teaser. I have to listen to it again because I didn't hear it when I heard it before. But people are excited. You know, my nephew's really excited. I'm excited. So not too excited, but it's, I'm interested. And I really want Keanu Reeves to voice Shadow. I don't know who they're gonna get, but I just think that would be neat. So anyway, in the game, they end up going to like this colony in space, and so there's these space boards, and one of the boards is called Crazy Gadget, and Crazy Gadget has all this technology, and I promise this will make sense. The story, it has all this technology. Well, basically like these gravity machines. So you have to, in order to get from like complete the board, you have to go up and down and side to side and really figure out how to do it when you need to go up and when you need to go down and get to which platform, etc. So when I first played it, it was pretty, difficult to figure out. And I was a young teen when I played this game. And it probably took me a long time to time wise to get through the game, several minutes, I'm sure. But I eventually figured out, turn the gravity here, turn it the gravity there, go this way, go that way. This monster is going to be waiting here, go kill that, robot thing, etc., etc. So eventually I did complete the whole game, and I got good enough at the whole game that I won, because you collect emblems every time you win a board, that you get different grades on how well you do it. So I did beat the game well enough to get A's on every board. So there were time limit ones that you could get an emblem for, and I don't remember how many you could get in total, but you had to get all A's to get one particular emblem too. And there was this chow garden, like these little kind of baby things that you take care of. I did it all. I raised the chows and taught, strengthened them, etc. I had one named Mango that was just a beast, and I did everything for that game and completed it fully. So I got super 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 good at the game. So one day, my youngest sister Tina, she was trying to beat Crazy Gadget. Now Tina, again, this game came out in 2002, I think, on the GameCube and stuff, when everybody got it. I think in Japan it first came out in 2001. She was born in 95. So I was born in 89, she's born in 95. And again, this is probably like around 2002 ish, if not 2003. So she's struggling to beat Crazy Gadget, but she wants to beat the game, and she's having some trouble and she just can't figure it out, right? So she's like, "Will you beat this board for me?" And I don't know why. I don't remember the story enough to know why I didn't want to do it for her. I don't know if I had other things I wanted to do, because it wouldn't have took me that long to do it. But I don't know if it's because I was busy doing something else, and that I'm always busy doing something else, like writing or whatever. So who knows? I could have been writing Dragon Ball Z fan fiction for all I know. But maybe she had the TV and I wanted the TV, and so I was bitter. I don't know the reason why I didn't want to do it for it. Maybe I strongly felt within myself she needed to do herself. I don't remember why. But I didn't want to do it, and I was like, no, I'm not beating the board for you. And so she went to my parents, and they're like, beat the board for her, beat the board for her. And so I was upset. And so I decided to be really petty about it. So I take the remote control and I start playing the game, playing it, thoroughly, do the whole board and killing that monster there, go left, right, up, down, etc. And she's, watching, all like, yay, this board's gonna be defeated. And so when you get to the end of a Sonic board, there's a big golden ring. It's always like been like that. And so and it says like gold, it's like flashing on there. So when it gets to the point where you can see the big golden ring, I just turn the game off. I just turned the game off. And she just falls over and starts crying. And I don't I obviously I did it to be mean. I knew it was mean. I thought it was funny, but it was mean. And I didn't realize how mean it was, I guess, until her reaction, which I thought was an overreaction. But again, she's little. She's probably 6, 7. So this was really mean. And then everyone starts scolding me like, Christine, that was so mean. That was so mean. And I don't want you guys to think I was just a mean big sister. This is probably one of the meanest things I've ever I did to her. Which I talked to her about this yesterday, and she didn't even remember it. I'm like, you don't remember that? She's like, no, this isn't ringing any bells. But but they scolded me, and so I had to replay the game again, and beat it for her, etc. So I guess she won the game eventually. But that's what happened. So anyway, I thought about this story. This memory came back to me yesterday because I was going back and forth with an ethics professor over abortion. And so he chimed in. I was on a thread, and I asked someone a question like, well, when my life have value? When was I a being worthy of being protected against violence? Something like that. And so the ethics professor, which I didn't know he was an ethics professor at first, chimed in, and he ended up posting an article from Salon. And I'll be honest, my first reaction was ew, because it was from Salon. And so the article, you know, it was a defense of Ketanji Brown Jackson, Justice Jackson, when she was asked when does life begin, and she didn't really have an answer, and people were like, oh, that's a really complex question, etc. Blah blah. I'm like, technically it's not a complex question, uh my life as an individual being, my human development began same time yours did, when that sperm met the egg and it was fertilized, and those things cease to exist, and then you had the embryo, begin its, you know well, there's the early stage of it, that the cells start dividing, etc., blah, growing, etc., blah blah blah, and eventually you get yourself, right? So anyway, open a biology book, an embryology book, that's what it will say. So objectively, scientifically, like that's the moment, right? But they're like, oh, but it's more complicated than that. And they're thinking about personhood and life in a more philosophical sort of sense, rather than the technical biological thing, that I think pretty much matters. But I guess then you could question from there, why does it matter? So in this article, it relied a lot on, or made the whole case basically around personhood is centered around the idea of that you have to be conscious. And it offered a symmetry of, which I've seen a lot of people use this, and but they'll say, oh, well, if you're brain dead or in a persistent vegetative state or something like that, and you're at the end of your life with your consciousness or whatever, people would consider at that point that you kind of don't exist anymore. That's the end of your life. So if your end of your life is basically when your mind is like gone or whatever, um then it makes sense to say, hey, well, your life doesn't actually begin until you are conscious. So to me, that doesn't make much sense, or at least I'm not gonna say it doesn't make sense, but there's things that are wrong with that. First of all, just because you were brain dead at the hospital, because we're asking these questions to get to the point of, hey, can someone unalive you, right? uh I couldn't just go around the hospital unplugging people. That would still like be murder. I'd still be charged for that, regardless if that person is, brain dead or not. That's something that the family comes together and decide, or maybe they don't have to decide. Maybe it's on the form of the person who's there, and they honor their wishes or whatever. Um, but we're talking about someone who is literally at the end of their life versus someone who's at the beginning of their life. If that person who was brain dead was going to magically be fine, not magically, let's just say organically, naturally, just kind of reboot and be good as new in like 9 months or less, we wouldn't be like, oh, that's the end of their life. We would just say they're, I don't know, going through a phase or something. We wouldn't just be like, okay, we gotta, it's okay to kill them now. That wouldn't be um our argument. So Trent Horn had this conversation with Destiny in the big like 3 hour debate that they had on the whatever podcast, and it's a good abortion conversation. I've talked about it before. I didn't actually do like a breakdown video, but it's a good conversation. Um, but I did talk about it. Um, it's worth going to go look at. Much better than the one that Destiny had with Lila Rose and uh, Kristen Hawkins. So anyway, um, if he laid out the symmetry of the, well, if human life ends when consciousness is impossible, the symmetry should be then personhood begins. If personhood begins like when the ends when consciousness is impossible, the symmetry is actually then personhood should begin when consciousness is probable. But he said even saying probable is being generous, and it should really be possible. And people will say even if you lose consciousness temporarily, that doesn't mean that you lose your ability to be a person. So there's some kind of permanency there. So if the fact that it's permanent is when we view like, okay, your life is over, then how come we're not looking at when it's possible? Then that's when we should consider it to be alive. So I wasn't fond of the article, and I think it hinges like far too much on the consciousness argument. And then I said, I don't want someone to pick and choose when I have value, and I referenced, that's what people did in the 1800s, referencing slavery. So then he posted a screenshot of an article. I'm not sure if he actually wrote this one, but the segment of the article to me kind of read like, how dare you make that kind of statement, and nuh-uh. And so I posted my article that I wrote saying, what is the 4th of July to the unborn? And it takes pieces of Frederick Douglass's What is the 4th of July to a Slave speech and the arguments he made there. And it compares them to arguments and things that we say, mentalities that we have about abortion and so on today. And so I shared that article, and then he just and I said something about dehumanization in the post when I posted the article, and then he just posted a book, and like that. Well, that's not, it's not dehumanization according to this person who wrote the book on dehumanization, and I didn't recognize the book, and I didn't wasn't really interested in playing the authority game with him, and I'm like, dude, I posted that article. If you don't want to read it, that's fine, but our conversation is over. Can end then if we're not gonna bother, reading my argument that I made. And and then I said, you can fight with your own words. And so then he, I guess, glanced over it. I don't know if he read the whole thing, but it seemed like he glanced over it, and he did some ad hominem attacks. He said, "Oh, these are just talking points," and then he tried to diminish it because I mentioned the sled argument. Now, the basis of the whole piece isn't about sled. That was just like really a line in the article. So then he posted an article that was like trying to debunk sled or something, which I didn't think the article was very good. So I ended up reading that article, and I replied to his points in that article, which he could have done to me, as opposed to just try and kind of insulting articles. By this point in time, I looked at his profile, and I saw that he was a professor, and I'm just thinking, I hope he has more patience and humility while dealing with his students, because when I go back and forth with some people, sometimes it's, you get snippy little remarks back and forth, but even on Twitter, and if you've seen me post things on YouTube, I'll do these really long replies to people, or I'll do really, really long posts. And the reason why my posts are long is because I don't want to have to go back and I'm trying to preemptively think about conversations I've had with folks already and objections they may raise. So I try to address them in advance. And then if someone says something different, then I will go ahead and reply to a lot of people, um, as thoughtfully as possible. So I think it was a great move to how much he dismissed me like that. But I did read his article and on from Salon. I read his article about the sled method, and then he had posted this essay that he co-wrote with someone about the critical thinking and the ethics of abortion. So I read that. It was about 50 pages long, and I gotta say I still wasn't too impressed. And I'm going to go through that in a separate video, so I'm not gonna break that whole down today. But so much of it really did also rely on the idea that they're not a person if they're not conscious. And to me, to really nail that in, even when he addressed other philosophical pro-life arguments, he almost dealt with the fetus as if it wasn't an organic kind of natural, so thing that was going to become us. Like, it was so far removed. Like when there was a section when it talked when he was addressing the idea that humans shouldn't be are different than animals and stuff because we're beings of a rational kind. Like, well, how are fetuses rational kind if they don't have consciousness? I'm like, because the obvious progression of this mature fetus to adulthood is this rational being. So like, how is this so far removed? Or when he addressed the future like us argument, he's like, how does a fetus have a future like us if it doesn't have consciousness? It was very strange. It was very strange. But the reason why I was thinking about his argument and meditating it and thought about this story about Sonic, the reason why I thought about the Sonic situation, uh, is because if you're going to argue that early fetuses aren't persons because they don't have consciousness, that's what I'm kind of was thinking about. Like, I was about to beat the board. I was right in front of the goal, the big golden ring. And before I reached the ring, I turned off the game to be cruel to my sister, because I could, because that power was in my hand. But if I had just touched that ring, reached that ring, like, I was right there. I timed it like that on purpose to be as cruel as possible, I guess. She would have got, the board would have been completed and you would have gone on to the next phase. So if you're a fetus and you don't have consciousness, and by the way, there's a lot about consciousness we don't understand. So I think we should be careful about how much we think we're certain about. I was telling my older sister today that we stopped doing surgeries on newborns without anesthesia, like, in the 80s. I think it was like the late 80s. If it wasn't later, but I think it was the late 80s. And she's like, "Oh dear God." I'm like, "Yes." Yes. Because they just thought that if at one point in time people argue that infants would be able to remember what happens, it wasn't a point in giving them the anesthesia, or they would argue that that they because they weren't really reacting, having much of a reaction, they just didn't figure that they were really experiencing pain like that. And so I guess it took them a while to kind of admit they're wrong on those things, and the parents were pretty outraged that their children were in pain, and these doctors were operating on them without any sort of, medication. But they would give them like things to keep them from squirming. Maybe the squirming was an indication that something was wrong. But that's science for you. That's science for you. That's people practicing medicine for you. They're practicing. That's what it is. You go to a practice and they're practicing medicine. The doctors, they don't know. Their house is a drama, right? But man, when my dad was in the hospital with COVID, my mom said, this feels like an episode of House, because they didn't know what was wrong. When my sister had a stroke in her eye, They were just doing all these tests, and they knew it was bad, or they knew that she shouldn't have it at her age, but they couldn't explain how it got there. They couldn't do anything to help her. They just, were like, well, go get some more tests done. So she paid to have more tests done and stuff, and no one really figured anything out. And praise the Lord, and either divine intervention or just went away on its own. But she's okay now, and all she has still left is some of the bill that she's still covering, and this happened during the pandemic, so it was a big bill. It was a big bill. So they don't, there's a lot of things they don't know. But my point is, it to me it doesn't make sense if the fetus is right there at something it's going to achieve, and you're just like, because I can, I'm just going to cut you off and reason that it's moral to do that because you haven't yet achieved it, but you need to achieve it to end up like she needed to reach that ring to complete the game. All fetuses need to reach are well, they're going to reach that level of consciousness if you just continue allowing them to progress, unless there's some kind of abnormality or something that that just ends up not happening or something, some kind of defect with your brain or whatever. But our natural progression is inherent to our nature to be of the rational kind, to have that level of consciousness. So to argue that that stage isn't like you're not valuable at that stage, how do you become valuable if you're not allowed to live past that stage? That's what I don't understand. Like Destiny kept saying, like I admire or I value conscious experience. And I think that's a pretty profound moral statement, or to say that you value it like that. So it's assuming there's something good about that. But okay, so you value uh a conscious experience. So why is it that so his cutoff is about 20 weeks? That's what Destiny would argue. And before then, he defended a bunch of crazy things when Trent Horn was asking like probing questions like, okay, let's say that they grew a child or whatever in the womb, but he wouldn't. He thinks it's intuition pumping if you say something like a child. Like, so let's say they're growing a fetus, and doctors can do something to it, so the fetus will continue to grow, but it's never going to get develop consciousness. Could you use that as like a sex doll? And Destiny was like, yes. He would say stuff like that. And Trent was just like, okay, we'll have to allow our audience to just listen to that and determine if that's good or bad, you know. But he would say things like that. So up into the point, like it doesn't matter how many you have until it gets to this point when it's like at 20 weeks, and it's like, okay, well then at that point they're going to develop some kind of consciousness, or it's like on the line or something. So then at that point you protect it. But if you value conscious experience, why wouldn't you protect beings who have the capability of who are on a self-determined path to be those conscious beings and have a conscious experience? And here's another thing. I was talking to my oldest sister about this afternoon, just running through some of my thoughts on this. And I said, okay, but even if you don't have a conscious experience or whatever, or like you're not self-aware or whatever in the womb, that doesn't mean that there's not value in how you're developing anyway. Like if you're a fetus, you're swallowing amniotic fluid and then like peeing it out and then swallowing it. So it's kind of gross, but um but doing that strengthens, like you're strengthening your body, you're strengthening your lungs and all that stuff to get ready for that moment when you come out and you take a gasp of air. So all these things that are going on in the womb are still so important into developing you as a whole, even if you're aware of it or not. Like what I've started following this page on Facebook of this woman who shows like 40 ultrasounds, because she'll show the picture of the fetus in the womb, and then she'll show the picture later of the baby when they're out the womb, and they're making the same gestures, the same facial expressions, and those same mannerisms and stuff. And and it just really goes to show you this is obviously the same person in and out. And Even when you watch a toddler, watch a baby develop, watch a baby grow, and the little things they do that you notice on the journey to eventually being able to crawl and being able to walk, that is all a journey. So to just be like, no, you're not valuable until you have a conscious experience. You can't have one if you murk me. And because the fetus has a future like ours, we know that they're going to develop into. I couldn't be me if I wasn't a fetus who was allowed to live. I couldn't be me. I wouldn't be here. So I can empathize with other people who aren't maybe existing yet, but uh but I can sympathize with the people who are in the womb, because if they are in the womb, they do exist. Because who else are you killing if you would need to kill them if they didn't exist? And knowing that that was my origin, why wouldn't I sympathize or empathize with that human and want them to not be destroyed in a way that I wouldn't want someone to destroy me? And I didn't mean to talk about this long, but another thing about the idea of this professor defending so firmly that it's not wrong to kill a fetus, especially early on, um, in the pursuit of trying to explain why abortion isn't wrong. Okay, if it's not wrong to kill a fetus early on, then that should go beyond just the mother. That should go if the father decided to slip an abortion pill in the woman's tea. There was a scene in The Witcher, not The Witcher. Yeah, it was The Witcher. I didn't watch the last season, and I ain't gonna watch this one with baby Thor, Liam Hemsworth. I'm done. I'm over it. Um, but there was a season with this dwarf, uh, and at the end of it, she was like pushed to the edge, and there's a horrific scene where she decided to no, it was I'm sorry, it was an elf. She did a magic spell for like all the infants because she had lost her child, and so she did a spell and she like murdered all the infants like at once, and all of a sudden you just heard all these screams and stuff. If she could do that to, let's say they weren't outside the womb, let's say that they were, you know 18 weeks in the womb, if she did that, why is that wrong? And you can say, well, because of the tragic, you know response of the women. What are they mourning? Possibilities. So the more you argue that the fetus isn't worthy of protection, that's gonna go beyond the mother's choice. It could be the father. It could be a jealous person. What if a woman slept with a billionaire, and maybe he was gonna divorce his wife or whatever, but he didn't get the chance. He died, and she's pregnant, and he updated his will so his heir would get all of his money basically, and his not yet ex-wife, when she's a widow now, she figures out that the mistress, let's say she's a kind mistress, like, I don't know, something you read in a novel or something. And she decides to have, something slipped in her tea or something, and she ends up having an abortion, and then they figure out that was her. What are you gonna do? That wasn't a person she killed. What are you gonna do? Unless you argue that the child has no rights because they're not a person or whatever, but because they're in the woman, and you could say, different uh laws about harm, like physical harm or whatever, possibly to that woman, or I don't know, poisoning or something. But that's still not akin to you know uh premeditated murder. So it can't be premeditated murder because you're not murdering anyone. um but if you're saying that it's something along the lines to that degree or something, because or there should be some kind of similar punishment because the woman wanted it, then the children, it's not that they have rights, it's that they're kind of the mother's property. And if you think these living humans are the mother's property, there's no point in getting upset when pro-life people make the comparison with dehumanizing people and treating them like property and comparing it to slavery, because we can kind of see how your mindsets are a bit similar there. It's not that they're the same thing. It's just that I'm pretty sure that if we were in the 1800s, I know what side you'd be on. That I can see it. I can see what you'd be willing to do for, I don't know, convenience or personal gain, acceptance of your peers. I can see it, you know? But I guess the most pressing thing, and I'll, I guess, go more into this when I make my video detailing the professor's sort of reasoning, is if all that matters is consciousness, I don't understand how you could argue it's not wrong to murder anyone. Or if wrong, if not, if maybe wrong is, you could say it's, maybe it's wrong, but why should it be illegal? So if someone murked you, you are obviously no longer conscious. You don't care about your memories, your feelings, your emotions. And if someone did it quick and, painlessly, it is what it is, you're gone. What kind of harm was introduced to you? You can't experience the harm, you're gone. So you could argue that your friends and your family would mourn you, hypothetically. What are they mourning? Possible futures, because you're presently gone. So and what they had with you is the past. So they still have their memories or whatever, but they're mourning the fact that they can't have futures with you. But fetuses have futures, possible futures. And Destiny said that when women mourn their miscarriages, that's what they're mourning, not like persons, but possible futures, which is a really crass way to put it. But is that the case when anyone is killed? People mourn possible futures. That's why we're mourning, right? Because you're no longer here. Um. So yeah, why does it matter? I don't know. I don't know, because he did address, like, it's wrong to kill people, like people who have consciousness, but it's not wrong to kill the fetuses if they don't have consciousness. But he didn't really explain why. Like, why is it really wrong to kill someone? And I don't know how he could really justify it. It's not something that he went through in all of his 50 pages. He's just kind of presupposed it and expected us to just be like, oh yeah, that's, yeah, as long as because you have consciousness, yeah, so it's wrong to kill you. But again, your consciousness doesn't mean anything to you once you're dead. So I mean, the purpose of these laws would be deterrence is part of it. But why would I have to be deterred if it's not a bad thing? Or me, or whoever is doing the murking? Why be deterred? And why punish that person? Because if the person did the crime, they're still living, they're walking around doing their own thing, living their life to the fullest. Why would you burden them through the whole trial process, stripping away their rights, um, for someone who is an extinguished person? What matters is the conscious being now. So why seek justice for them? So those are things that I thought about. And hopefully this is something that you guys I guess find interesting, or something that is making your wheels turn a bit. But the paper went into all kinds of trying to debunk abortion, or pro life arguments, and they brought up the Bible and all kinds of different stuff. And their Bible section was horrendous. So, um, that'll be a fun little project to go through. I'm gonna try not to make it like forever long. I did recommend the Abolitionist Rising go through it of one of their podcasts, but I don't know any of those guys personally. I just tweeted it at them, and they'd have, I'm sure, very interesting takes. But moving along on this same sort of topic, kind of, um, there was a very tragic, horrific story um, that I heard over this weekend, which the timing was interesting because when I was at dinner at my sister's birthday, my sister Angelina was telling a story about a woman who left her baby alone, but she gave them a bottle and stuff, and the baby was younger than this baby in this story we're about to talk about. But she wanted to go out clubbing and partying, and nobody would watch the baby because everybody basically felt like, and her family, I guess, was like, you need to take care of your child. You need to leave alone this clubbing and stuff and be responsible and take care of your child. And she didn't want to do that. She wanted to go party. So she just kind of like left the bottle propped up and left, and I guess intended to be back in a few hours. But she did some drugs, and she ended up being missing for like 2 days. And she came back and she didn't realize she was gone for 48 hours, and the baby was dead. So that was a pretty horrific story to hear. And so now there's this other story um, of this mother from Ohio who left her child, who was 16 months old, alone for 10 days. 10 days. Christy Delario's daughter, Jalen, was found soiled with urine and feces after her mother decided to leave 10 days on vacation to Puerto Rico. When she returned, Jalen was found unresponsive, laying in her own feces. Jalen was alone for 10 days and died of starvation and dehydration. It is unknown why Colin Delero just got up and left without telling anyone about her daughter at home, and she will be sentenced on March 18th and is facing life in prison.
And Council, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, Your Honor. Chuck Kazoka on behalf of Ms. Candelario. Acknowledge the indictment, waive reading, advisement, and notice, and are not guilty plea, ask for reasonable bond, and for the public defenders to be appointed.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge. You can't shut up. Okay,
So, yeah, that little girl's a cutie. This is really crazy that this happened. Most people think that is really horrific. How can anyone do things like that? So, but I did have a thought that other people had as well. This one page, this is, it's called Clump of Cells. It's a, that's the title of their name on X Twitter or whatever. And they said, wonder where that mindset comes from with a little detective glasses thing. Well, they had some screenshots that might explain it. What if instead of calling it abortion, we just said we want to relocate the tiny human? I'm not saying it has to die. I just don't want it in my body. Just take it out, and if it cannot live, sounds like their problem. And here's another one. Abortion Chat said, well, if it's a living human, I'm not obligated to keep it alive with my own body. These are, things that people will say, in abortion debates. And here's a Bella Promote. No, you don't have any obligation to save anyone. And here's Desert Hippie here. If it could live on its own, it would. It's not my fault it can't. So I think there's a point here from the clump of cells that we, Rush Limbaugh, people would question him sometimes about the life issue and other stuff, because he would deal with Republicans that were pretty like highbrow and snooty sometimes, and they'd be like, "When are we going to get all these evangelicals out the party and that are interested in all these social issues, etc." Blah blah blah. And he always thought it was weird. He's like, "These people are why you are winning." Being able to like build this coalition of like evangelicals for the right, they're a very powerful voting base. So the fact that there are people like kind of waiting to get rid of them or make them irrelevant is really weird. Just from a strategic standpoint. And he's puzzled by that. But he would say things like, if you get the life issue wrong, like everything like stems from that. And I think that's very true. And I heard Charlie Kirk say that recently on the Whatever podcast, when this topic came up. But I think you could see that there's a problem when you forego parental obligation. And I'll have to think about this kind of more deeply, but I just think our world is so screwed up for so many different reasons. But I think we're perpetually a nation of people with, I guess, maybe, I don't know, Peter Pan syndrome or whatever, people who just don't want to take responsibility for themselves. And they wait and they wait and they wait and they search for meaning, but they're searching for meaning in ways to just fulfill themselves, not realizing that accepting responsibility, especially the responsibility of raising a tiny human like you, is something that can really transform you into just a significantly better human with a better sense of the world, more developed sense of the world. But we encourage people to not do those things. Go get that bag and, just have focus on the self and so on. And I think that's really warped us in a really bad direction. But anyway, with this particular story, someone said, we're pro-choice people are obviously against this. And I asked the question, like, why are you obviously against it though? Why are you obviously against it? Because that doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me, if you being obviously against it. So I'm going to show you a couple of screenshots from conversations that I had with some folks on this topic, because I don't think from their standpoints, that I hear them debate all the time. And I hear people talk about this topic all the time. People talk about this nonstop on, Twitter, for example. There's debates constantly going about this topic every day, all the time. I've had many. I have mutuals that have many, and I don't jump in the debates all the time to talk, but sometimes I'll just listen, and I'll listen for a while, and the things that people say are wild, absolutely bonkers. So this person was like, pro-choice people absolutely and obviously condemn a mother leaving her 16-month-old alone for 10 days. You're being disingenuous. I said, why do you obviously condemn it? If you believe this woman has a parental obligation to care for her 16-month-old, why doesn't she have a parental obligation to, at the very least, not commit a premeditated killing of that exact same child at 16 weeks in the womb? What is the profound difference? And if the answer is it's different when it's in her body, we still expected this mother to expend bodily resources to keep her child alive. So yes, you obviously condemn it, but can you justify why? And I don't think they can. And some people tried. Some people tried. I have some typos on these Twitter stuff, by the way. Especially, I was typing some of the stuff while I was walking around in the big Christmas store and stuff. So if you see some typos, that's what's going on. And they said, I'm not, this person I proposed question to, Richard, said, I'm not going to argue with you about bodily autonomy. We all know the reasons why some are pro-choice and some are pro-life under certain circumstances. I obviously condemn it because I'm a person who believes that child abuse and neglect is bad. And I said, suffocating/starvation is bad. So is dismemberment. I'd consider that abuse, murder, even, including in the womb. So yes, abuse is bad. So if that's your argument, um, neglecting a child so they starve versus in the case of, let's say, the abortion pill, is someone taking a pill to purposely starve that child out, and then you take another one to expel them. So you have one person who killed her child through neglect, another person, someone who purposely did it. So this person said, because you and I both know there's a difference between something being inside your body physically and having to use your body to care for your kid. I said, yes, it's far more difficult to care for a newborn and takes deliberate effort versus pregnancy being a natural bodily process. My sister has 5 children, 1 newborn and 1 who just turned 2. Do you think they don't require the use of her body or resources? That's silly. And this person said, there's a difference between making food by mixing formula and having nutrients being taken from the pregnant person's body to support it. Which, by the way, my sister just breastfeeds her kids. I don't think they've ever had formula. Maybe she tried it once, but yeah, they're not. She just she breastfed all of them. Bodily autonomy is about use of organs or blood for the benefit of another. It's medical rather than caretaking of a born being. And people like bodily autonomy. Well, I'm sure let me just read my tweet before I add commentaries. Do you think a mother doesn't use her organs every day while attending her children, especially since all of her organs are in her body, wrapped by one giant organ, which would be the skin? And bodily autonomy is making decisions about your life, your future, and your body. Abortion is ending someone else's life, their future, and expelling their body. The mother who opted not to care for her child has a much stronger bodily autonomy claim than a woman who commits the premeditated killing of abortion. In This person said the difference is developmental age and location. Born life residing inside another human's body has less intrinsic value than independent born life. Suggesting a fetus and born child are equal is lunacy. And I said, justify the position, please. What about exiting the vagina grants such a significant intrinsic value to a child who couldn't survive 10 days alone? And they said the fact that you are now living independently outside of another human body. Next. I said, then how did the 16 months die? And so they eventually went on to say, like, oh, you're just being disingenuous. You know that the child died of neglect. I'm like, yeah, how they die of neglect if they can operate independently and live independently. And so when people play these games, when they're like, well, when we say independent, we just mean that they don't have to like basically feed off the organs or be connected, to live within the womb in that kind of way. But the babies, they can't roll over, they can't, their mind isn't like, well, how can I get this food? Like, where's this food? Like, okay, my limbs, they're strong enough. Let me go over here and get me something. They can't climb and start whipping up pots and pans and other things to take care of themselves. They're not independent at all. They're not independent at all, and they know that. But they'll say that, well, it's different because the mother specifically has to take care of them. But in the case of when they're outside of the womb, someone else can take care of them. So the real ethic of the pro-choice movement is that if the child needs their mother, then the child doesn't deserve to be protected against violence, because the baby exiting the womb is still vulnerable. It's still dependent. It's just less dependent. So when it's super super dependent on mommy, that's when it's okay to rip them to pieces, to deprive them of food and energy and other things like that. It's just a crazy thing. So that was the end of those conversations um with those folks. But uh oh, it, no, nobody could really answer the question. Like, can you justify it? Someone on Facebook did try. Um uh and all they said is, I'll give it a go. Abortion is a termination of a pregnancy. Abortion can occur from the moment of conception. Abortion can be near instant and painless. Up to a certain point, pain would be impossible due to lack of nerve systems, nervous system slash brain. There are many arguments to separate these two acts. And there's a lot you can use to separate the acts, including the fact that one is neglect and the other is purposeful termination of that life. So yeah, there's a lot of differences. And the definition they gave for abortion is real cute. The termination of a pregnancy. Yeah, it's a termination of a pregnancy resulting in the death of an embryo or fetus, leaving some stuff out there. And abortion can occur not just at the moment of conception, which we would assume is probably spontaneous there, but and it's silly to bring that up because we're talking about induced abortion, but it can also happen basically up any point to its full term. Um, and at that point, it wouldn't be painless. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Uh, doesn't matter. So no one could really explain it. No one could really explain it. So yeah, if you don't believe that anyone, and people don't follow this logic the full way through either, if you really believe that no one can be used to keep someone alive, what people will say that specifically in relation to someone being attached to your organs, but they know the only way that really happens naturally, I guess, besides with like Siamese twins or something like that, is with a mother giving birth to her child or having a child. So they use this really specific language and these really specific scenarios to carve out abortion. But if you just kept applying that ethic, because if you really, because again, all your organs are inside of your body, and you are expending energy and other sorts such of things. I don't know, when you're working and whatever. So if you really don't believe that someone is entitled to keep someone else alive, then why do you have the neglect laws? Why is this woman going to jail? Or why do people think that it's ethical to have universal health care if people don't want it? People vote for it or whatever, but why not just allow people who want to participate in it? If I don't want to pay for your medical bills, why should I have to pay for a stranger's medical bills if I'm not entitled to keep you alive? And again, that's a case where I'm not entitled to keep you alive. They want to be able to do something deliberate to end someone's life. So, or what about the pandemic? People wanted folks to stick things within them that would change their bodies or mess with their bodies. And they said that you have to do that or grandma will die. And you're a grandma killer if you do not take it. And I'm sick of these people pretending like people weren't so pushy and evil with how they were trying to get people to take these jabs. Like, I knew people who couldn't go to school. I mean, like college, even if it was like online, they still wanted people to get jabbed. Uh, uh, I talked about how, at the time, and I've talked about it since then, how we didn't know what my sister was going to do about her job because they were enforcing the OSHA mandates. I know people who worked in the medical field who was allergic to like basically everything in there, and they still would not give them exemptions. and then they didn't want you to be able to go out and have life if you didn't have a passport, a vaccine passport. People were getting let go of healthcare jobs, government jobs, etc. People were getting, kicked out of the military because it was just crazy, a crazy time. And people were saying that if you didn't get the jab, then you shouldn't be able to get care at the hospital. Those are the sorts of things that people were proposing. Do you guys remember that? I do. Or what about stories of people who couldn't get donations for different like organs if they were unjabbed? Now I've seen alerts like if you go to like the if you're going to donate the Red Cross, well, I guess that's what I didn't try it myself. So I have seen this, but I guess we'll just take it as a grain of salt to be responsible. Um, that if you want to donate blood, they want to know if you've been jabbed, because if it's recent, they want you to wait a bit or whatever. So there's just all sorts of things um to take into account. But they want you to memory hole this stuff. They really want you to memory hole this stuff. One time, and I think I already talked about this, but one person I was going back and forth with on the topic of abortion, and they had this perspective that you can't force anyone to do whatever. And so and I was curious what they thought about the jab. So I started going through the history, and apparently they had argued with other people about this before. And she's like, "Well, I don't think people should forcibly be jabbed." And I'm like, "Okay, that's good." But then I saw that she defended that we didn't force people to get jabbed during the pandemic. And I'm like, okay, if people treated the pandemic like we treat pregnancy and abortion and stuff, we could say, okay, we're not going to make you have your baby. We don't make you have your baby anyway. It's naturally happening. It is inevitable. Um, but okay, we're not going to criminalize abortion. If you want to get one, you can get one. However, we're going to make it so if you do have an abortion, you can't go to school, you can't get a job. If we did things like that, people would say that's force. That's your curious thing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes, absolutely. So you cannot pretend like people weren't trying to violate your bodily autonomy during the pandemic because it's a good talking point for you. Whatever. It was just, but people don't stick to their own ethics, man. They don't. They don't. And you can really see people don't have any good sense about right and wrong in this world. There was the man the other day who set himself on fire. I'm not going to show the images. I'm not going to play the video, but it was a mentally disturbed person um, who went to the embassy, the Israeli embassy, and just lit himself on fire. Lit himself on fire. And people on the left are like, well, I would say like full left, but the really crazy like pro Palestinian left um was just uplifting this dude. Cornell West. Let me show you Cornell West's tweet. I had retweeted it. Um he said, "Let us never forget the extraordinary courage and commitment of Brother Aaron Bushnell, who died for truth and justice. I pray for his precious loved ones. Let us rededicate ourselves to genuine solidarity with the Palestinians undergoing genocidal attacks in real time." This man lit himself on fire. No one should be like, it's not heroic to just light yourself on fire. This man was obviously disturbed. If you go on TikTok or other social media apps and you glorify unaliving yourself, people could report your videos or whatever, and they can get taken down. You could possibly lose your account. And yet you have all these people who are glorifying this person who unalive themselves and for their propaganda, and they're uplifting them because because it fits their politics, and they don't like Jews. It's like, this is really disturbing. Why can't you still be like, oh man, that's really disturbing, guys? And then this dude here was like, well, there's no evidence that he was suffering from mental illness. He's very clear about his reasoning. I'm like, no evidence. He set himself on fire. That's not a normal for what? For what? You set yourself on fire over here. Like Biden's not gonna be like, okay, I guess we're just gonna I don't go over there and end the war ourselves. Like, but it shows that there's so many people who are mental. Politics can make people crazy, sure, but there are people who are unwell who are drawn into politics, and I think it goes to like the idea that people don't want to, they can't smell their own crap, and they'd rather tackle these big issues and fight for these big issues and stuff rather than just kind of looking inside the mirror and saying, what can I actually do about my life right now? Like Jordan Peterson was talking to people about climate change and whatever and ways to impact the world. And his message was just like, go clean your room, like focus on things that you can control. And people didn't like that too much. But like you can't control the weather like that. You can't control the climate like that. You can go, I don't know, what are you going to try to do? Just like legislate us to a point where it's impossible for families to live and drive, and you tax us, and big business find, I don't know, ways out of it kind of, and you just overall economically bring us all to our knees, and it's still going to get a degree hotter. Like someone like Elon Musk, if the problem can be solved by humans, um, or if it's something, that we're really impacting that much, if it can be solved or needs to be solved, it's gonna be someone like Elon Musk who makes, I don't know, some kind of device or something. Like technology will probably help us, not taxing people into oblivion or something like that. Not these people throwing uh paint on priceless art. But what does your room look like? Like there's things that are in your control. And the room is an important thing, but it you know it's probably real instructions, but there's also like a metaphorical thing going on. Like what can you actually touch in your life and organize and make it right? What can you yourself control and put in order? And so many people will focus on things outside of their control, to because it makes them feel virtuous, it makes them feel good. I'm not saying that people shouldn't be engaged in trying to change the world in a positive light, but you have to have proper perspectives in order when you tackle these things. And this man, he did have goals, and he, talked about genocide and apartheid and Jim Crow and buzzwords, lots of buzzwords with no sort of real grasp of the region and historical context and so on. So you know, I guess I'm gonna be I guess it's not too edgy, but a little edgy, maybe clickbaity, and say leftism kills here, but um like there was no purpose in doing that as far as it being able to advance the agenda that he wants. Like what why set yourself on fire rather than, I don't know, demanding a ceasefire, or not a ceasefire, demanding Hamas surrender, because there's other issues in the heart that led you to these poor sort of conclusions. And anyway, um really really grotesque world, that so many people were like uplifting this young man um and their heroics and comparing him to religious martyrs and other things like that. Nope. At least not Christian ones, which I saw people trying to compare him to Christian martyrs, but I mean, uh there are people who have religious killings that they can definitely point to, but I don't know if they didn't want to do it, like point to the obvious. Maybe it's too taboo. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. You guys can go to blacktnews.com, check different content on the website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews. Well, on the website, you guys can drop in your email as well to get different alerts and so on. Um, And if you are in the Michigan area, I'm going to go ahead and post this on my socials when I get off, but we are having a gala this weekend that we'll have food and we'll have music, and but we're raising money for this life drive that we do in the summer. And so we buy, last year we gave a bunch of stuff to a pregnancy crisis center, so proceeds, will part of the proceeds stuff will go toward that. So um, if you'd like to come, and I'll be singing it, and my voice has gotten better, so hopefully it'll be 100% by the weekend. But I'm not the only person who's singing, so we'll have a good time. So hopefully you guys can make it out, and if you cannot make it out, you can still sponsor. So you can sponsor um, the event, or just leave a gift if you would like, to help out with the cause. And so some people have done that. So I appreciate that. God bless you guys, and I will see you tomorrow.